This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And I am so excited to welcome to our global community today somebody who I think we're going to really enjoy getting to know because talking off camera, we share a real passion for the human element of recruitment. And we've got a lot to share today. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Renuka Gundala, who is the founder and director of Talent Grader. Welcome to you today, Renuka. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Lisha. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here and talking to you.
I'm very excited too. We've actually been connected through the wonderful Angela Cripps, who has previously been on, I think it might have been season 4. I probably have to go back, who is the founder of Recruiting Gym. And I believe you're actually a trainer for Angela's Recruiting Gym, aren't you?
Yes, I'm one of the coaches and EDI practitioner at the recruiting gym, and
Amazing.
I'm so pleased to be introduced to the wonderful women in leadership community
Yeah,
um,
that's
through
right.
Renuka.
If you're connected to me on LinkedIn as you're listening to this now, you'll see that I'm a co-founder of an amazing invite-only community called the Women in Recruitment Leadership, and Renuka is a fellow member of that. So yes, if you want to know more about that and you're listening to this as a founder or you know a female leader that should be involved, drop me a private message and we'll let you know how you can get involved. So explain a little bit about your history, how you evolved as a professional, and then how you ended up forming your business Talent Grader.
Right, thank you. So I've always been in recruitment. This September, it will be 20 years in recruitment. And I
Congratulations.
came to the UK in 2023 to do my master's in HR. And ever since I've completed my post-graduation, I've started my career in recruitment. And I have a brief agency experience, but my experience is quite strong in in-house recruitment, I would say. And in the last 10 years, I've specialized in executive search and senior recruitment. And I've worked in a few different sectors, but the sector I absolutely adore and admire and love working in is not-for-profit sector.
Wow.
And I used to work for a international charity, and when I got made redundant during COVID, I decided to set up my own company. And I actually started a talent grader with an intention of helping recruiters and HR professionals to find talent assessments like psychometric assessments and various different assessments easily online. And when I launched that, because I've always been a recruiter, I wanted to do something alongside it. And also offer recruitment services and decided to specialize in executive search and offer executive search through Talent Grader. So, and I work with charities and purpose-driven organizations, organizations like B Corp certified organizations. And
I was just about to say B Court as well. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. I love your introduction and congratulations on your 20 years, first of all. And I love the fact that you've got such a passion for the industry that you have chosen to partner. That must be, we're in quite challenging times, aren't we, in terms of not-for-profit and charity, particularly. What does the landscape look like at the moment in 2025 for those particular companies?
You're absolutely right. It's quite challenging, and what's happening in the US is also having some impact on the charities as well, not just in the private sector. A huge impact on funding, and smaller charities or some charities are deciding to close, and that obviously has a knock-on effect on some recruitment and many other work, and their own work, most importantly, isn't it? So either pausing, freezing recruitment and things like that. So it's been really challenging for charities.
I'm sure it has been, and as just as human beings, I think we all need to, find deeper pockets more than ever to support anything, any cause. There's no right or wrong cause, but any cause that matters to you, and try and align a purpose to it. And if you want to know more about the charities that we partner every year, we do tend to choose smaller charities, the ones that maybe struggle a little bit more with fundraising, and more importantly, raising awareness for their particular cause. So that's an amazing industry to be part of. So one of the other things that you just mentioned there is that, as well as executive search, looking at the sort of psychometric analysis, etc. So do you cover all the holistic elements of that? You actually provide all the assessment?
I would say I'm more of a practitioner rather than a specialist in psychometrics. So I have in the I would say in the last 15 years of my recruitment career, I've used psychometric assessments as part of selection process.
Mm.
So I'm a more of a practitioner. And one of the challenges that I found whilst using assessments was that it is there are so many options available online,
Yeah.
and it's not very easy to find information. So with that in mind, I launched Talent Grader, which is basically like a database. You go online, you look at assessments based on your needs, and you can find something that you're interested in. And the hub will introduce you to the partner who is promoting their tools online.
I see
So
what
it's
you mean.
basically like a directory. But in my own work, if there is a need to use a psychometric assessment, I will use if it solves a problem.
Mm.
But I have not always, I wouldn't say that I have every recruitment I do, I use psychometric assessments. If there is a need and if the client is requesting it and it will address a certain problem and help them to recruit better, then I advocate it. Otherwise, it's not something as a default I'm suggesting, I would say.
Interesting. And thank you for being so transparent about that. I mean, I believe that, like anything, there are so many options out there available to decision makers and to those hiring, and that includes ourselves for our own industry. I've been recruiting for the recruitment industry for over 20 years myself, and I can probably count on one hand, literally, the amount of recruitment business owners that actually incorporate psychometric profiling when hiring in, whether it's experienced or not. And I find that really intriguing because they will then go and sell potentially, or like you do, recommend it if that's part of the process. And I find, do we contradict ourselves that we're not utilizing a scientific process to not just identify and attract, but also retain? We've got a retention problem, haven't we? So I mean, I guess you as a business owner yourself, if you were hiring in people, would you actually do a psychometric profile on those people?
If I was hiring for my
For
clients,
yourself. For yourself.
for myself,
Mm.
um, I think it depends what I'm looking for. What
Okay.
does it give me that an interview or any other process cannot give me?
Mm.
Uh, I wouldn't consider myself as a psychometric expert.
No.
What I do is in my work, my learning from recruitment experience is that there is no perfect selection method out there, including interview.
Okay.
Um, so relying on just one way of assessing candidates, like just relying on interview or thinking that a psychometric will help me to recruit the right person, or only the psychometric, isn't what I find valuable. So it's understanding what is it that I'm assessing. Can a psychometric assessment solve that problem? Or I have recruited a virtual assistant for me. I'm independent. I don't have a big team. At the moment, I'm not needing to recruit for my team. But in the past, when I've recruited a virtual assistant myself to support me with some sourcing, etc., I have given them a task and they've done that task and that told me about their experience, and that was enough for me. So the psychometric was not needed in that case. But I'm entirely driven by what is it that I need to see
Yeah.
um, from the process.
I think that's really, I love that perspective of it because I genuinely also think there is no silver bullet to what makes the perfect scenario. And this is often where there's an issue with creating a benchmark if you are hiring in a number of similar level roles. So if you're a recruitment business owner and you're thinking about, growing out a team to cover the US or Europe, which seems to be definitely a trend right now in terms of, market penetration, how do you know whether, candidate A, candidate B, candidate C all have what it takes to work together if you're hiring them all in
Mm.
at the same time, but they all come from, different companies, maybe they don't know each other. And I genuinely think this is where a good recruitment process needs to have an element of adaptability and being nimble to
Mm.
the particular individual. So, I mean, for you as as a practitioner yourself with it for your clients at Exec Search, where do you see, I guess, processes that seem to be seamless? Where are the most enjoyable processes? Where are the most successful processes? Are they the ones that are, doing competency based? Are they doing presentations? Are they doing psychometrics as well? Are we still going for drinks? Are we still going for meals? Are we meeting the team? Like, what would you say would what if you were to create this blueprint, what would it look like?
So based on my recent executive search projects, I have recruited CEOs, directors, heads of fundraising, heads of HR. So at the senior and executive level search, and I've recruited board members as well. Board members generally tend to be a conversation because it's more about their time commitment for the organization, because they would have had that skill and experience for so long. So if I was looking at paid executive search, paid roles, my ideal process would be to understand from the client what is it that they are looking for, where what problems this individual, my candidates will solve for them.
Yeah.
And based on that, I recommend either using scenarios. And if it is a lot about, at the senior leadership level, understand it, like some of the qualities you mentioned, like adaptability, the resilience, innovation. Is it something that we can easily get out of the interview, or do we need a scenario? And who will put that scenario together? Do they need help? I often work with a business psychologist as well, who is very experienced in designing scenarios. And if that charity has budgets to be able to support that project, then I would involve a specialist to help me with writing a scenario. But otherwise, just having that conversation, putting a case study together, which the client would do, I would be recommending based on what they are looking for. If a psychometric test will offer additional insights, then I recommend that. But as long as we're able to explain to the candidates as well why we are using a certain scenario, certain assessments, because the whole transparency piece is sometimes goes missing in the recruitment process. We think that as recruiters or employers, we have the power to make a decision. So we expect the other person to just come along and be part of it.
Yeah, it's
Because
like
we feel that's it. And we are kind of saying, okay, this is what we are doing, and you are going to attend this test, and we're going to give you feedback. But it's less about the individual, isn't it? I mean, I'm not saying that every organization, every recruiter does it like that, but there are lots of fantastic recruitments I work with and I network with. And I hear some amazing experiences, candidates saying, I worked with so-and-so recruiter. They were really amazing. They looked after me well, and they were very honest and supported me along the journey and things like that. So that's what we want to do, isn't it? As recruiter, we have so much power to influence and make an influence.
We really do. We really
Yeah.
do. And we said off camera that this conversation will not include any AI chat because we're both bored of it, basically, and it's not our expertise. But that is, to me, what a true recruiter does. We immerse ourselves in the journey that this candidate, whether it's a senior CEO, whether it's an engineer, whether it's, in my case, a recruitment director, whatever it might be. And we are truly taking them on that journey and adding and influencing. I don't think that word gets talked about enough.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very often where, if you overcomplicate a process, it becomes too sort of systematic and it doesn't become about the person and the individual and the skills. Can I just clarify, when you mention their scenarios, are you talking about like a role play scenario? So you're giving a case study of what you would do in this situation, or is this where the candidate builds out actual examples of where they've demonstrated the behaviors that they're looking for?
That's a good point. Yeah, I really appreciate the question. I think it definitely needs clarification. Scenarios don't always become turn into role plays. I have used role plays in the past, but in the last few years, I don't believe I've used role plays at all. There was one occasion for I was working on a senior assessment assignment, and they've asked me to recruit a personal assistant at the same time, and they used something similar. However, but for senior recruitment, I have not used a role play at all. And case studies usually will be like they will be given like a brief background of a situation
Yes.
that the organization would be grappling with, and the person would be invited to talk about their views and how they would address and solve. Sometimes that those scenarios could be part of the interviews, scenario-based questions. Other times it could be they would be given a half an hour to think about how they would approach the scenario and come into the interview to talk about that.
I think that's brilliant. I really do. I mean, I think there's something deep down within us that's possibly the inner child that as soon as you say role play, people freeze, even to the most experienced person. But I like the fact that you're encouraging people to give examples. So one of the things that you are really passionate about and clearly an expert in, which is where the involvement with as a coach for recruiting Jim is involved, is your EDI work. So, how do you think the landscape is at the moment? Because we're at a really critical moment in time with the Trump administration putting EDI on the back foot. I really, I've not personally seen any huge ripple effects within my client base, which is all within the UK, or within the Northwest, actually. But where do you see the conversation right now with the clients that you are supporting in terms of where EDI is on their agenda?
First of all, thank you for your kind words about my EDI work. I do believe that I'm a practitioner in EDI rather than an expert. I don't know if anybody can call themselves an expert. There may be some people who have really done some great work and who consider themselves expert. And I would say the reason I say that is because it's an ever-changing landscape. Can anybody be an expert? I'm not sure, because we're all learning. And if we truly have experts in the society, why are we still talking about the challenges that we are still talking about? It's really, really sad. It really affects some of the charities that I work with. There are lots of fantastic charities who are in the disability space, neurodivergent space, fighting for justice, supporting women. All these charities exist for a reason, isn't it? So we are all learning from each other. I think I'd just like to say that I'm more of a practitioner, and your question about the impact of Trump's decisions and power on the UK. I think there are lots of fantastic organizations who are still interested and have a really great intention to make a positive difference, have a great positive culture, and support equity and inclusion. However, there are some organizations who may have stronger associations with the US market and are coming under the influence and having to make those changes. We will have to see how those organizations will fare and what messages will they give to their workforce. So a few months ago, they were very interested in talking about improving their culture, inclusion, improving women leadership,
Yeah.
etc. But suddenly, if they've withdrawn their commitment, what does that mean for the people who are working there?
For the people who are working there, and for the, going back to the attraction, not versus, but in addition to retention, the people that are currently working there, but also attracting future talent, if that is still not on your agenda, we all know that the companies who have the most diverse boards tend to be the most profitable. That is a fact. That is not opinion. That's based on data. So what can we do as recruitment practitioners ourselves? I love that you use that word because I think you're absolutely right. I think you're right. I think it's like people that call themselves gurus or experts or champions or anything like that. At the end of the day, you're continuously learning. You don't ever complete the school of recruitment, do you? You don't ever complete the school of anything to do with human behavior. So I think it's a really salient point that you made. What can we do better to ensure that as an industry ourselves, we are truly elevating what inclusive hiring. So we're walking the walk ourselves, because I still think we've got a long way to go.
Absolutely. I think it's mainly about the first thing that we have to do with ourselves is that asking ourselves, why do we believe that we want to be inclusive? What difference does it make to us? Is
Yeah.
it because we want to look good?
Mm-hmm.
or we really want to make a positive difference to our people. And
Yeah.
if we have a greater intention of doing it because it's the right thing to do, and we have seen enough in the history where things haven't been good for people of color or people with disability. Basically, the difference in us creates discomfort, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, um, and how do we overcome that?
Mm.
That feeling of being different, but embracing it and being together with it and feeling more connected. And if that intention is there, then we, people of color or people with a disability or who identify as neurodivergent, um, or any other difference, we are so different, isn't it? There are lots of differences to talk about here. Then we wouldn't feel uncomfortable in workplaces. And we still have a long way to go, but it's these good intentions that once we understand this, this is why we want to recruit. Is it because you operate in an area where there is a real good racial diversity, hence why you want to recruit more people of color? So, but what is your intention there? But the fairness and the legal compliance
Yep.
should come first. Your intentions are there, but however, the recruitment process has to be fair. Otherwise, you're inadvertently discriminating somebody else.
I'm so pleased you raised that point because I think this is where, and it's very hard to give any specific examples. I always try and maintain a very sort of generic view of the market because I don't know where people are listening in terms of industry and sector,
Mm.
etc. But I would say that there's a real disconnect between what is our intention. We like to think as an industry we are innovative, we are inclusive, we are at the forefront, but the reality is that a large percentage of recruitment business owners have revoked remote and flexible working, and we're now back in the office, which therefore does not permit for those who have got disabilities, neurodivergent responsibilities, considerations, those who have caring responsibilities. You know, if you've got to be back in an office 8 till 6, 5 days a week, you are discounting and not being inclusive. So I think a lot of it is down to, it's I think my concern has always been around this entire conversation that people like to think that they're going to be able to put that on their website. We are an EDI employer, and the reality is very, very different.
Mm.
So, for anyone that's listening who potentially is thinking of either launching their own business or moving jobs, how do we really know whether a process is truly inclusive to anybody, regardless of what their intersectionality is?
I always talk a lot about empathy when it comes to process, recruitment process. That empathy shows in the job description, and how it shows in the job description is in the form of the essential criteria. How long is it? You're sitting there as a recruiter expecting somebody to write you a cover letter or a statement explaining why somebody is suitable for the job, but you have listed like 101
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
essential criteria. Then we really are not empathetic to the candidates.
So just before we move on, because this is a really important point. We've never discussed it with all the EDI conversations I've had. I've never discussed empathy before. So what would you recommend? How many things should be on an essential list?
According to best practice in research, there are a few numbers thrown around, but what I would say is probably 5 to 6, and then think about, am I actually going to be able to measure all of these in an interview? Usually, when you do an interview, you have an hour. And
Yeah.
how many key questions can I ask? Six
Okay.
or seven, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it is any
Really?
more, yeah, if it is any more than that, you're going over. So by putting everything on piece of paper or a job description essential criteria, you're actually not measuring all of them. You're just saying, oh, I'm just going to put it there because just in case.
Yeah.
But that just in case is having an impact on the diversity of the applications you may get. So there is some research available that says that women are less likely to apply if they don't meet all of the criteria,
Yeah.
most of the criteria. but men would apply if they meet 60%, 70% of the criteria. So these are the things that we often overlook and
Yep.
think, okay, I'd rather put everything on the essential criteria just in case, and then having an impact on the diversity of the applications, I would say. Yeah.
It's challenging, isn't it? Because I guess because we've got such a broad spectrum of people listening, in some markets, it might be that you need a really stringent, they must have these skills. These are the essentials. And then you've got your nice to haves. When I was trained in my early career, when we were taking on a new client and we were working on very technical roles, it was engineering, we were taught to have three essentials that any candidate must have, and then anything else was a nice to have. So we called them the most important thing, and it was three things. One was usually around a technical capability. One was usually around their contribution, so their achievements, and then one was usually around where they were at in their trajectories as potential. Which you could potentially challenge, but I love that you're using the empathy. But that's when you get into the interview stage that a leader can demonstrate, or the hiring manager can demonstrate empathy through empathetic listening, empathetic questions. But at the same time, we're possibly at a time where, and we're not going to talk about AI, but so much of hiring is done through automation. How does anybody expect to even get through that? But I think it's a really valid point. And I sometimes see, really, boring, homogenized job descriptions where it's just like, God, who's going to apply to that? So maybe we need to take a step back and actually write better job adverts that are going to appeal to people, to the person that you really want to attract.
I would say so, because it's the recruitment is like an investment. We often see this as a task that needs to be completed, but recruitment is more mindful
Yeah.
and as an opportunity, as an investment in our own organizations or in clients' organizations.
Yeah.
So a lot of thought and needs to go into this. I spend a lot of time when I do the retained executive search. I spend a lot of time with my clients in understanding what is it that they are looking for, and I do a really critical review of the job description and the person specification to understand who they are looking for and what kind of questions I can ask my candidates so that
Yeah.
I give them those insights. I would say, by putting a lot of time and effort into planning the recruitment,
Yeah.
we are actually showing a lot of empathy to our candidates.
Yes.
And that translates into a very specific and a brief a job description. What do they need to know at that stage? Because mind you, a lot of senior executives or even any candidate at any level, job search is a job in itself.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time and energy, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep.
You
That's why
know,
they come to us, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to, I feel we need to kind of work with our clients, if we are recruiting for our own teams, we need to put that time and effort into understanding what is it that we are looking for and work on it, and give what they need to see. Because even when we look at the statistics, and a lot of research is available in terms of neurodivergent candidates as well, what is it that neurodivergent candidates consider as barriers? Long list of essentials, unclear job descriptions. These come up quite often as barriers into even applying for jobs, let alone getting back into employment.
No, totally. And I think, I think from my perspective, it's ensuring that we are not being reactive to what a client is asking us to do. It's very often, it's almost rushed through. The client needs to hire, I need to go out and do the shortlist, and whatever it might be,
Yeah.
whether you're contingency or retained. We haven't even covered that today. But I think it's actually realizing how crucial this part of the process as a recruiter, the value that we can add by helping to design. I love it because I do a lot of senior leadership within recruitment industry. So I'm placing a lot of recruitment directors and MDs and founders even. I will actually help to design that job description. I don't really necessarily want something that they just use ChatGPT to write, because it's like,
Yeah.
you have to read that. Let's talk about what is it that they need to do. Where are you at right now? Where do you want to get to? And it's I think for recruiters listening who truly want to elevate and truly want to future-proof themselves, it's taking everything that you've said there around sort of that empathy, that inclusivity piece, but ensuring you're creating a net that is wide enough to appeal to a diverse talent pool, but equally where it's not negotiable. The sort of the non-negotiable. I like to call I like to use that term, negotiables and non-negotiables. And I think it makes a much better, you'd like to think, candidate flow for the client, because ultimately they need to hire, but a better experience for the candidates in the process at wherever they're at in their career.
Just to kind of add to this, or build on what you were saying in terms of the negotiables and the non-negotiables, is that a couple of questions that I find very useful to me and my clients is that I always ask, is this skill experience that you're asking for important to succeed in the role? And if they say yes, and if there are lots of yeses, then the next question you can use to filter down even more is how often do they use that skill? And
Yeah.
that will definitely reduce that essential criteria down quite a bit.
Yeah, no, totally. And challenging the essential criteria, how important is it that they've done X, Y, and Z? What would
Yeah.
happen if we didn't see any candidates for the next 3 months, that because there's nobody that does that? How important is that? And I think it's so important. So that is absolutely brilliant advice. And I'm so grateful for you for doing this podcast. I know that you've done a few in the past, and I'm really excited for our audience to get to know you through this episode today. Have you enjoyed recording, Renuka?
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And we'll obviously make sure there are links for Talent Grader if anybody wants to know more, particularly around the sector that you're operating within. And of course, your role as a coach for Recruiting Gym as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.